This video will serve as an open letter to the channel Mirai Owners Club asking for a little bit of help. Hello, Mirai Owners Club. I hope you are well. I am writing this letter to ask for your help answering a question I have been wondering about. And once I explain it to you, I think you'll want the answer too. First off, I need to start by talking about BEVs and one of their inherent weaknesses, specifically high power demand applications such as track driving, drifting, and high-speed runs. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start by taking a very simple version of a BEV powertrain with just the motor, some wires, and a battery. Under normal operating conditions, the battery provides power to the electrical motor until it runs out of energy. During this time, the battery can maintain a consistent power to the motor, allowing for a consistent result as far as power is concerned. Now, let's go one more degree real world and up the load that the motor is requesting from the battery. What happens? Well, if the load is high enough, the chemical reaction and electrical resistance inside the batteries causes them to heat up, keeping this load up, and the best case scenario is that the battery is damaged and that their life is shortened as a result. Worst case scenario, the batteries become a small fire that you can't even roast marshmallows on. To prevent this scenario, manufacturers generally do two things. One is add a cooling system to the batteries to keep them from overheating, and two, to add a control module to monitor the temperatures and limit powers when the battery gets too hot. This keeps the batteries from getting damaged or becoming a possible source for deadly s'mores. So, how does this show up in real life? Well, there are a few things I can point to. One example is the Ford Mustang Mach-e GT Performance only allows full acceleration for 5 seconds thanks to the vehicle's electronic brain restricting power after that point, trying to protect the batteries. Another is the introduction of Cheetah stance to the Tesla Model S. In the article linked below, Car and Driver ran 15 hard launches of the 2020 Tesla Model S back to back, making sure to keep brakes brief in between runs. The pre-Cheetah stance update runs saw the 0 to 60 time rise from the high 2-second range to nearly 6 seconds. Because in the 0 to 60, torque is the limiting factor, the torque of the drivetrain is determined by the batteries, we can assume that the power drop coming from the batteries to the motor was roughly 50%. That's a 50% drop over roughly the course of 3 minutes of max power draw, not including brakes. To be fair, Cheetah stance did drastically reduce the 0 to 60 time increase, keeping the worst time observed over a similar test to under 4 seconds as opposed to 6. So they were able to keep the power loss to around a third as opposed to what would seem to be a half. According to the article, it appears Tesla accomplished that by just allowing the batteries to get a little hotter. I call this the well-worn quality control technique of, I'm sure it will be fine, aka the I ain't worried about it philosophy, which has never horribly backfired ever. And any evidence to the contrary is fake news. In the same article, Car and Driver references the Porsche Taycan, which solves the problem in a different way, by keeping the power the same, but adding more batteries. Adding batteries reduces the load on each individual battery cell, solving the problem by doubling the weight of the heaviest part of the car. That's a scenario that most racing drivers would absolutely love. If you offer most drivers the choice of making their car either have more weight and or less power, they definitely won't look at you like you've offered them a free punch in the face. So what does this have to do with you, your car, and your channel? In short, I think we have a love of defying false dichotomies. Why choose between more weight and less power when a third option exists? I propose hydrogen fuel cells are that third option, and I think you can help prove it. Going back to our basic motor setup, swapping the battery out for a fuel cell might yield different results. There is a little bit of data linked below that suggests that a fuel cell's performance would actually increase with increase in temperature to a point, meaning that not only would the fuel cell be able to handle the heavy load placed on it, by the motor, it might actually get more efficient while doing so. Additionally, if you have seen a fuel cell, you will notice that the weight is quite a lot lighter when compared to a battery of similar power output, ideal for lightweight applications like aeronautical power supply and sports cars or race cars. However, the real-world data is severely lacking on FCEVs under such conditions. That is where you come in. Ideally, you would enter your Toyota Mirai in the 24 hours of Le Mans.
Wanted to build the greatest race car the world's ever seen, to win the 24 hours of Le Mans.
Do you think you can beat Ferrari?
I can try. We're lighter, we're faster. That don't work, we're nastier.
However, as awesome as that would be, something tells me that would not be a reasonable request. So here are some alternative things you could do. You could take your car to an SCCA sanctioned track day. However, any racing, which this definitely would qualify as, could void your warranty if Toyota catches you doing it, which if you post this on YouTube, I'm guessing they will fine. Even racing against a timer could give Toyota reason to cancel your warranty, and I don't think either of us would want that. The next thing you could do is recreate what Car and Driver did with the Model S. 15 runs down a quarter mile of fairly flat road, going both directions. I've done the math, and you should be doing around 85 miles per hour at the end of each quarter mile, if you start from a dead stop each time. So, to be clear, the procedure is do a quarter mile run in one direction, turn around, come to a dead stop, run the quarter mile again to return to where you started, then come to a dead stop, do it all over again. An example of me doing just that in Forza with a car I tuned to have similar specs to yours should be on screen right now. Each full throttle section would count as one run towards the 15 necessary to replicate Car and Driver's test. Instead of recording the time, because that's a no-no according to the warranty information, instead record the speed at the end of each quarter mile. The change in trap speed and the change in the power the car produces are indirectly related here, and power is the limiting factor. The power drop should be evident if the speed changes over the course of the runs. If you're worried about the speed limit, instead of marking out a quarter mile, you could also mark out 515 feet for your runs. This should ensure you stay under the speed limit because I've done a calculation that should have you just at the speed limit when you hit the end of the marker. The downside is that this setup is less taxing on the powertrain because it's kept out of its highest demand section of the power production longer, significantly changing the experiment. However, some back-of-the-envelope calculations determine that the max power draw section of your car's RPM range should be any time the motor is spinning faster than 4,000 RPMs or around 30 miles per hour road speed. Most BEVs have this threshold in the 60 to 80 mile per hour or and up, so the experiment should hold. That said, if you do decide to do the slower speed method, I would suggest that you do twice as many runs, 30 versus 15, to ensure that any changes still show up in the curve for the power loss. Also, the point is to let the system build up heat, so minimizing the time between each run is critical. Try to keep the times consistent and to a minute or less in order to make sure the experiment is valid. If the trap speeds stay consistent or even possibly go up a little bit over the course of the test, it would mean that fuel cells would make a superior power supply for sports cars, race cars, and drift cars as opposed to batteries. Meaning, Toyota might want to change its game plan from going after making a better luxury ride than the Audi A8 and instead try to chase down the Porsche Taycan at the Nürburgring. I look forward to watching more of your content about FCEVs in general, regardless of whether this test is part of your content or not. Thank you in advance for any help you provide. Good luck with your tests, and please share any results in the comments below. Also, I would ask Toyota about this, but the most likely result of that would be that they'd run the test and I would only know the results for sure when an FCEV 911 competitor shows up at the Tokyo Auto Salon, and I would prefer not to go that route.